Holden, Bonds, Arnott's, Rosella, Victa. These weren't just products, they were proof that Australia made things. In 1966, manufacturing represented nearly 30% of this country's entire economy. Today, it's barely 6%. Every Australian brand you loved has been sold off, shut down, or quietly hollowed out. And how that happened is a story far more deliberate than most Australians realise. In the years after the Second World War, Australia was a country that made nearly everything it needed. In towns like Cessnock, the hum of the Bonds sewing lines was as steady as the sunrise. Rows of women in crisp aprons guided fabric through machines, turning out underwear stamped with a label that meant something. Made right here by Australians, for Australians. On kitchen shelves, Arnott's biscuit tins and Vegemite jars stood as quiet proof of a national habit. Buying local because local meant quality, and it meant us. By 1966, manufacturing wasn't just an industry, it was the backbone of the economy, responsible for almost 29% of Australia's GDP. That figure spoke to a time when jobs in factories, mills and workshops stretched from the suburbs of Melbourne to the Hunter Valley. For many, a payslip from Bonds or Holden wasn't just a wage. It was a ticket to a home, a future, and a sense of belonging. A worker from the Bonds plant would tell you, years later, about the pride in seeing a neighbour's child wearing something she'd stitched herself. The products were tangible, but so was the community they built. Factories sponsored footy teams, hosted Christmas picnics, and shaped the rhythms of daily life. The phrase Australian made wasn't a marketing slogan, it was a promise and a point of pride. This was a country confident in its ability to provide, where the goods on the shelf and the jobs in town felt inseparable from the national story. In 1975, a gathering of nations in Lima set out a vision for global industry, calling on developed countries to help shift a quarter of the world's manufacturing to the developing world by the turn of the century. Australia signed on, but the real changes came later, shaped more by Canberra's own choices than by any overseas declaration. By the early 1980s, a new mood had taken hold in government. The Button Plan, named after Industry Minister John Button, laid out a path to gradually dismantle the tariffs that had shielded local factories for decades. Bit by bit, the walls came down, first for cars and clothing, then for almost everything else. The idea was to make Australian industry leaner, more competitive, and ready for a world where borders mattered less. Factories that once hummed with certainty now faced a future full of questions. An economist from the time might say, "We thought open markets would make us stronger. What we didn't see was how quickly the ground would shift beneath our feet." As tariffs fell, foreign companies took notice. On April 21, 1997, Campbell's Soup Company bought Arnott's biscuits for $655 million. The deal sailed through government checks, with the Foreign Investment Review Board and the ACCC both giving their approval. At first, nothing much seemed to change. The familiar biscuits stayed on supermarket shelves and the factories kept running. But for the first time, a brand that felt as Australian as the backyard barbecue was now controlled from an office in Camden, New Jersey. What began as a quiet policy shift soon became something deeper, a steady erosion of local control. The sale of Arnott's was not just a business deal. It was an early sign that the ties between product, place, and people could be loosened with the stroke of a pen. Pressure came from every direction and it didn't let up. For Australian manufacturers, distance was always a silent tax. Shipping a container from Melbourne to Europe cost up to 30% more than from Shanghai, sometimes adding thousands to the price of goods before they even left the docks. The so-called freight penalty, driven by long sea routes and high port charges, meant that even the best-made products started at a disadvantage on the world market. Then came the power bills. In the 1990s, governments sold off electricity networks, promising competition would bring down costs. Instead, industrial energy prices soared. By 2017, manufacturers were paying more than double what they had in the early 2000s, sometimes as much as $180 per megawatt hour, compared to $55 before privatisation. For a biscuit factory or textile mill, energy wasn't just another line on the ledger. It was the difference between profit and loss. The dollar had its own say. During the mining boom, the Australian dollar climbed above parity with the US, peaking at $1.10 in 2011. Every jump in the exchange rate made local goods 40% more expensive overseas, while imports flooded shelves at prices homegrown brands couldn't match. As these costs stacked up, shoppers changed too. Surveys showed that by the late 2010s, most Australians were choosing price over origin. The old loyalty to Made in Australia faded in the face of a 20% saving. For factories already squeezed by shipping, energy and currency, the final blow often came at the checkout. What looked like isolated closures were, in truth, the result of relentless overlapping pressures, each one chipping away at the certainty that once held towns and brands together. On the morning of October 20, 2017, the last Holden Commodore rolled off the line at Elizabeth. After more than half a century, the factory gates closed behind nearly 1,000 workers, some of whom had spent their entire adult lives on that floor. For the town, it was not just a matter of lost wages. Holden had been the heartbeat of Elizabeth since the 1960s, drawing families from across the country with the promise of steady work and a better life. At its peak, the plant employed more than 13,000 people. By the end, just 945 remained, watching as the final car, red, polished and unmistakably Australian, became a symbol of something bigger than a brand. The shock rippled far beyond the factory walls. Local shops saw their regulars disappear. Cafes that once filled up at lunch stood half empty. Real estate prices dipped, and the footy club struggled to find sponsors. For many, the closure meant more than a job lost. It meant the loss of a future they had counted on. Retraining programs offered new skills, but for a worker who had spent 30 years fitting chrome bumpers or wiring dashboards, the idea of starting over felt impossible. One former worker put it simply, "Holden was our life. The plant gave us purpose, and it gave this town its soul." He remembered the pride of seeing a Commodore on the road, knowing his hands had touched it. Now, he said, the silence in the factory was louder than any machine. The closure of Holden did not just end a chapter for Elizabeth, it left a question hanging in the air about what it means to belong, and what is left when the work that built a community is gone. Not every story ends with the gates locked and the lights out. In 2017, something rare happened. Vegemite, the spread that had been a fixture on breakfast tables for generations, came back under Australian control. Bega Cheese, a company from the Bega Valley, bought the brand from Kraft for $460 million, bringing production and ownership home after decades in foreign hands. The move was more than a business deal. It sparked a wave of quiet pride. A regional official called it a win for local jobs and the Australian spirit. Since then, a handful of smaller makers, craft brewers, boutique food producers, and family-run workshops have found ways to survive, even thrive, by leaning into their roots. But these rebounds are the exception, not the rule. For every Vegemite that returns, dozens of other names remain offshore, their story now written elsewhere. Names like Bonds, Arnott's, Blundstone, Dunlop, and Victa still appear on store shelves, their logos wrapped in the colours and slogans of a country that once made them. But look closer, and the link between brand and place is often just a memory. Most of these heritage brands are now owned overseas, their production lines running in factories thousands of kilometres from the towns that built their reputation. The numbers tell the story. Manufacturing, which once made up nearly a third of the nation's economy, now stands at just 5.4% of gross domestic product. it is a quiet reversal. Australia, a country that once stitched, baked and built for itself, now relies on imports for almost everything it consumes. The question lingers. When the products that shaped a national identity are made elsewhere, what does it mean for the sense of who we are? For many, the answer is still unsettled. Today, those familiar names echo through imported goods and empty factories. As policy profit and distance reshape our shelves, Australia's industrial story grows quieter, and its meaning endures in every town that remembers what it once made. The question now is, what will we choose to value next? Share your thoughts below.